Take two. Sorry, something went amiss. All right, so I was going to talk about TikTok, but I don't want to talk about TikTok. If you aren't familiar with the TikTok scenario, U.S. President Donald Trump, you're probably familiar with him, wrote an executive order, which means the president basically says, I have absolute power and I can do whatever I want, and banned putting TikTok and WeChat in app stores in the United States last night. Of course, we all know there's a dozen ways around that, so it's all kind of pointless, but it basically means people in the U.S. can't get updates for those apps any longer. Probably not much more effect than that, but anyway, we don't want to get into politics, and I know according to the press, I'm supposed to be some ultra-liberal lunatic who is trying to subvert you and turn you into little drones or something, but yeah, we're not going to get into politics. I don't think I could talk about TikTok and Donald Trump for 5 minutes and not get into politics, so we won't talk about that. Let's talk about Maze instead. So Maze Ransomware is a pretty interesting product, and this particular story today is about how it has started using something that Ragnar, which is another piece of ransomware, had been using. And basically these things keep evolving, adapting, changing. And the reason is to get around restrictions placed on running software on your machine. So my assumption, and we've all probably had to take one of those training classes, right? I think I take at least 2 a year on phishing and a couple a year on sexual harassment. And basically from what I've seen, neither one of those things probably does very much good. And there's a lot of money spent on them. So I know one company that spends, millions of dollars on these classes, and I don't know that it really, they don't seem to have any effect. But it is an infinite series, because the phishing people can just literally do this and do this and do this and do this forever, right? So eventually someone will fall for the scam. And if that doesn't work, they'll just use credential stuffing and get you anyway. But, I mean, not that we shouldn't train people, don't get me wrong, but I just don't know how effective it really is. It seems to me like the people that are, it's very easy to get drawn into these click things. But let's talk a little bit about, so I'm presuming you know something about ransomware, and I will give you a little bit on ransomware that maybe you aren't totally familiar with. But modern ransomware basically is a framework of tools that are mostly downloaded after the fact. So you click the link, and because everybody has all kinds of anti-malware, anti-ransomware, antivirus, all these things running that look for signatures and behaviors, it's not a good idea if your ransomware, the minute it executes, starts downloading, or if that file contains mechanisms that would do this, it'll get put in a signature list, and boom, you're done, right? Because your ransomware is never going to get anywhere. So what they do instead is they write a very simple script that basically goes out onto a command and control server. And like I said, I know you may know some of this, but I'll just give you a quick background on it. A command and control server, which is somewhere on the internet, and then begins downloading these obfuscated pieces of code. So these obfuscated pieces use all these other different kinds of mechanisms to scramble the code around so that it's not really functional, and that often gets you past signature detection, because it's just all scrambled up garbage, right? And then when it gets down, it gets reassembled. So the script actually knows how to reassemble, and it doesn't even have to be complicated, right? You can literally just say, I'm going to take out the letter A everywhere in this book and replace it with X's or zeros, and every time you see a zero, put an A back in. It can literally be that simple, and it kind of circumvents all the different detection apparatus. And downloading it in little bitty pieces means that it never sees very much at one time. There's a whole bunch of these are very interesting things if you want to look at them. Be careful. But this is news. So this is an approach that basically says, what if instead of you downloading a little script, because now what we've done is we've moved further over in the kill chain. I've been advocating this for a while, that we just need to stop worrying about phishing and assume we'll get phished. And we need to worry about how do we stop it in the next step of the kill chain. Not that we really shouldn't worry about phishing, and still train those people, because if you stop 99 out of 100, that helps. But let's worry more about this next part of the kill chain. And so by limiting permissions, limiting the ability to execute code and whatever, we may be able to prevent some of this from going on. So what Maze did was now they're putting this into a virtual machine file. And so by allowing people to download a VirtualBox disk in the form of a Windows MSI file. So an MSI file is an executable. So this is a compiled Windows executable file. And you download this onto a Windows machine. And they basically embedded a VirtualBox disk image in there, which I presume is encrypted. So that means because it's inside of a virtual machine, it could literally be further encrypted. And then basically what happens is it says they bundled an 11-year-old copy of the VirtualBox hypervisor inside there as well. So it basically creates what is called a headless virtual machine. So that means it's a virtual machine that's running inside of another computer, and it doesn't have to have like an actual server behind it. And so basically with this old version of VirtualBox and the disk, it installs VirtualBox, starts that running, and then executes the VM. Yikes. I mean, that's clever, you have to admit. But this was something apparently Ragnar was doing already with this. And basically then what happens is, inside that virtual machine, it's a literal copy of something. They didn't say what was running inside there, did they? I don't think so. Think about, you take like a copy of Linux, a really small one, like Tiny Linux or something, and put that inside of this MSI file, which basically fires it all up and executes it locally. And that Linux machine is, you have complete control over it, right? Because it was yours. You built it. So that means it could run as root in there. So what they do then is they put this in there, and if you go on in this article and you look a little further, basically what happens is, let's see, I was going to tell you, so the payload was a 122 megabit, or megabyte, modern, that's really small, with a 282 megabyte virtual image inside. And all this concealed a 49 kilobyte ransomware executable, which is running on the virtual image. So let's just go through this kind of like a little bit. So you get the person to download. So it's still a phishing attack, right? I mean, it absolutely still relies on one of two things. So the one of two things that is there, and there's something else I was ranting about. Very heavily relying on one, and I guess we could also add to that. So this is the three things that people do, right? They either steal your credentials from somewhere else and use them, and then they inject the attack. They guess your password or brute force your password by spraying, or they just get somebody to click the link and download the thing. I mean, that's the three terrors of the modern age. And so what happened is it downloads all this, so it's literally a copy of something. And did they ever say what it was? I read through this just to get an idea of what was going on. I don't think they ever said what was on the file. Oh, no, it does here. I think they're going to say, is it Windows 7? Wow. So yeah, so it's got the Maze attack this is the Ragnar attack, which was using Windows XP, so it says it right there. And then this one's using Windows 7. So it's 733 megabytes with a 1.9 gig virtual image inside of it, concealing 494 kilobytes of ransomware. So this is what they're doing. So they take this VirtualBox hypervisor. So this is what runs virtual machines. They build a Windows 7 image, put their ransomware on the Windows 7 image inside the VirtualBox. They can run that with whatever level of privilege they want, right? I mean, they can run it as admin because it's their Windows 7 machine. Get you to execute the MSI file that installs all this. This is all scripted, so when this VirtualBox starts, or this virtual machine starts running, it fires up this copy of Windows 7, which then executes their ransomware. I mean, you got to admit, it's clever. And then what happens is that maze infection starts running, and the idea was that when this machine comes on, it's inside your network, right? Oh my God, it's already inside your network, right? The call is coming from inside the house. And so what that does to you is it's a trusted maybe. I mean, and again, this is all about, did you set your network up pretty strict or is it Wild West? And basically it looks like what it does, it says it copies, so it starts to spread. So this is, of course, what it's wanting to do. And it's got symbolic links. So basically what they're doing is they're creating symbolic links to common network locations and then copying this thing over onto those. And this turns it into a worm. Sophos said telemetry revealed that the attackers had penetrated the network 6 days prior. So my other piece of this that I wanted to tell you a little bit about ransomware is I think a lot of times we see ransomware as a kind of final, I'm not saying all ransomwares, but I'm saying a lot of attacks may well use ransomware as a kind of, and the scene I always describe as this action movie sequence, like pick an action movie somewhere. You know, some point somebody, pours gasoline all over the apartment floor and walks out the door and lights a cigarette and flips it over their shoulder back through the doorway, and the whole place goes up, right? And that's kind of what this is. This is, I'm leaving the scene of the crime and I don't want any evidence left, so I'm gonna blow the whole place up with ransomware so that you aren't looking for what I was doing, exfiltrating data, whatever. Or it could just be straight up ransomware, but their telemetry said that they were in the network for 6 days. So it may be that they're just getting in with credential stuffing. That's probably the most common vector, to be honest, right now, is they just go find credentials. When I get that Mr. Fufu, dwight at mrfufu.com, I go straight to mrfufu.com and see if I can get in with that, right? I've got a password for it. Okay, so I get in your network with dwight at mrfufu.com and the credentials I got on the dark web, and because dwight used his same password at every website everywhere, I've got it. Get in, do a lot of recon. Nobody notices I'm there because I have a login, right? And I get in, and then when I'm done, I can set this up and get it started. And because it's trusted, it's really nasty. And so if you allowed that, if you can let Active Directory trust that thing because it's running on a machine that's already trusted, so it's inside of another machine on the network that's already trusted. And remember, I don't know if you know this, but VirtualBox bridges the network connections, or it uses NAT. So it basically is using the IP address of the local machine. So this machine I'm recording this on, if I have VirtualBox running, it would be using the same IP address I'm using right here. And so the network would see that as coming from me. And I'm a trusted machine on the network. And all of a sudden you got this big problem. This is a really cool article. It's on ThreatPost if you want to read it. I think it's probably worth your time to read things like this. It's a very interesting attack. It's clever. I always admire cleverness, even if I hate the idea of it. But basically, if they can get you somebody somewhere, or they get in. So now remember, you don't even have to use phishing. You can use credential stuffing, and boom, and then it's all over but the crying. And credential stuffing attacks are very common. Password spraying, not so much, because most systems detect people trying to do that and then shun them. But phishing and credential stuffing are widespread and common. And so if I can get this virtual machine onto your machine, then your machine is sort of pseudo-trusted, and the machine can then latch onto other machines' shares and share out this Maze ransomware. And this is similar to what Ragnar did. So I think in this article, it was either this article, I read several articles about this, but one of the articles said they thought that maybe they were working together. That, the Maze people called, went across this, down on Evil Island or whatever. They went down the street and went, "Hey, Ragnar, why don't we, form Maze-nar or something, Rag Maze, and use, we'll use your technique and we'll let you have our, whatever." But the way they do this stuff now, they probably commercially licensed it and filed like a notification to the SEC or something, like a merger. But anyway, a very interesting attack. I won't take more of your time this morning, but I thought I would run that down for you, and it's definitely something worth taking a look at if you're interested in ransomware, and you probably should be. So, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Bye.